Hey third graders, I am super excited about this art lesson today because it's so much fun. So today we're going to be learning how to make a stained glass window, not with real glass, but a stained glass window using a couple different materials, and I'm super excited about it because it ends up looking really cool. So when you think about stained glass windows, I want you to think about where you might see a stained glass window. So a lot of people say, maybe I see a stained glass window at a church, or sometimes people have stained glass windows in their houses. So the cool thing about stained glass windows is that they're super colorful, right? And they let the light through. But maybe something you didn't notice about a stained glass window is that it has black lines all throughout it. So check out these pictures really quick and see if you can find the black lines. Did you see what I was talking about? So the cool thing about that is when we're creating today, we're going to try to do that same thing in our stained glass windows. So in a real stained glass window, that black stuff is really important because it helps hold all of the different pieces of glass, colored glass together. Okay, it's called solder. It's a really fancy name. And it's super important because it's kind of like melted metal glue that holds it together. We're not going to be using that today, of course, but the black lines are important because that's going to help make your stained glass window look really realistic. So check out this video and see how we use a couple different materials to make some really pretty stained glass windows. So for today's lesson, you're going to need your clear plastic paper, a black Sharpie, and some paints, or you could also use colored Sharpies to color in if you don't have paints. I'm going to start off by drawing a design. I'm going to just use an abstract design of just some lines. So I'm drawing with a black Sharpie. You could draw on a piece of paper underneath if you're nervous about just drawing with Sharpie and not erasing. I'm just going to draw some straight lines in different directions, so I wasn't too nervous about it. I do have a white piece of paper underneath my plastic right now so that you can see a little bit better on the video. But basically, I'm just going to draw some real thick black lines in different directions to make some shapes all over my plastic piece. I'm going to draw a couple more and then I'm going to speed up the rest of my lines. Okay, now that I'm done, this next important step is to flip your plastic over so that your Sharpie is actually on the back. You want to do that so that it doesn't accidentally get washed off or smeared when you start to paint. Because our next step is we're going to start filling in all of our little shapes here with paints. So basically you're just going to paint right on the plastic and you are going to fill in your whole plastic piece with different colors of paints. I'm just using some liquid tempera paints. You could use acrylics, or you could also do a Sharpie if you wanted to fill in your shapes with Sharpies. That would be fine too. So some of these I'm going to overlap colors and just kind of mix them on top of each other. But basically I'm just filling in all of my shapes. So I'm going to speed up this painting process for you to see what it looks like when it's all finished. It's okay if you go over the black a little bit because remember your Sharpie is on the back of your plastic now. Here's what it looks like against the window after it's dried. It's pretty cool. You can see the black lines and the color comes through the paints nicely. I'm going to show you another example, just a quick example of a stained glass window that I did more of a picture instead of an abstract design. So check this out. The last step is I'm going to add a frame around my original stained glass window. So I'm going to trace around my piece of plastic. So I'm going to trace around it and with pencil so that I know where to cut for my plastic, for my frame. I'm only using half because I'm going to fold it in half and then I'm going to cut along that line. So I'm actually cutting just inside of that line a little bit to leave just enough so that my stained glass doesn't fall through the hole. So I traced it and then I'm going to cut just inside of that line. I folded it in half so that it will end up being a frame, just like that. Next, I'm going to use some clear tape to tape my stained glass to my frame. And I'm going to try to tape it really close to the edge so that it doesn't show through on the other side after I tape it. So I'm just barely taping the edges of the plastic piece to the paper. I'm going to go around and tape all the sides to make sure it stays on really well. Go. The very last step is I'm going to make a hanging string for my stained glass window so that I can hang it in a window. So I'm just going to need a hole puncher and some yarn. This is optional. You could tape this to a window or you could just hang it on the wall. It doesn't have to be hanging if you don't have access to a hole puncher or some yarn. But I'm just going to punch 2 holes at the top and then tie my string inside each hole, so that way I can hang it up somewhere. There we go. Here it is hanging in the window at school. So again, if you don't have access to paints or if you're not using a border or string or yarn, it's totally fine. Your stained glass window after you paint it will be great. You can hang it up then. There's just a couple options to take it one step farther. So hopefully you give this stained glass window a try.